Hey, all, welcome to the GI Justin channel. Thank you guys for tuning in today. It's a beautiful day in Florida here. So, another huge story out of Washington that has implications for millions of Americans that I want to talk with you guys about today. So, basically, uh, prior to the Supreme Court ruling that is coming up soon, the House, basically, run by the GOP, the Republicans, has voted to block Joe Biden's student loan forgiveness plan. And basically, Wednesday, they voted 218 to 203 to pass a bill that would repeal Biden's plan for massive student debt relief. The majority of Republicans voted in favor of this resolution, and the vast majority of Democrats voted against it because that's what they do. It's Washington. That's the only way things get done there. Um, an interesting part of this, the plan would forgive up to $20,000 in student loans for Americans who make less than $125,000 a year. And it's on hold now because there's two challenges headed to the Supreme Court over it. One of the things that I think is super interesting about this, you know, I graduated in 2005 and I am still paying off my student loans in 2023. That is how these things are meant to run. They're a business. And if you actually dive into the financial aspect of student loans are bought and sold between banks as a security. And they use them as a way to secure debt and hold basically millions of Americans hostage for the fact that they're going to college. And I think one of the big things of note here is, having a college degree is not what it used to be. I'm 41. In my parents' generation and previous generations, having a bachelor's degree meant you'd get a good paying job that you could support your family with. And I don't think that's the case anymore. I think the world is flooded with bachelor's degrees because my generation and the generations following were all told, hey, if you want a good paying job, you have to go to college. Well, as part of that, now tons and tons and tons, 42 million Americans have student debt that is greater than $50,000. And that is shockingly huge to me because it's another way for banks to kind of hold money over your head, to hold life choices to go to college over your head. Now, granted, yeah, trade schools are always an option, but for a lot of people that want to get college degrees, this is the way it has to be done. Uh, so the Republicans in Congress are blocking the forgiveness plan before the court can rule, just to confirm that it goes the way they want it to go. Because as with everything else, the Supreme Court could rule in favor of the Biden administration and say, hey, yeah, it is a lawful order. We're going to go ahead and say, yeah, it's fine. Go and do it. So they're trying to kind of get out in front of it. And the legislation would restart payments on student loans as well. So now you've got people who have been able to not pay student loans. It happened during the COVID relief bill when Donald Trump was in office, and it's been offline since then. And this would actually bring it back to the forefront and reenact the student loan payment plans that are required. I think the thing that I find interesting about this is it's kind of being painted as a handout for Americans that basically qualify for this program. But the thing is, if it's Americans who are making less than $125,000, you're not looking at the upper crust and the elites of America who are making untold sums of wealth. You're looking at working class America. You're looking at people who have jobs for a living and are supporting families on that amount of money. So, there's a representative from North Carolina named Virginia Fox. She is the chairwoman of the House Committee on Education and the Workforce. And she basically has come out saying that Biden's plan would contribute to inflation and would hurt working class Americans the most. Okay, well, who is hurt more? Give these people access to $20,000 in relief, or don't and continue to put them even further behind on all these payments and everything. It's a weird situation. So as part of that, kind of what you're running into is a tough situation because the Democrats are trying to actually help people that make less than 125,000, and Republicans are saying it's a handout. It really is a disconnect amongst a million other disconnects right now to include, the debt crisis, where all these things are on the table because they're looking at ways to cut cost. And a little sidebar here, one of the things that they have raised as a great way to cut cost is cutting this program and cutting VA benefits, cutting veterans benefits, decreasing the amount of money we get per month, decreasing the cost of living allowance, basically the once a year that they look at the numbers on how much things cost and add or subtract based on that. Well, usually they add because everything gets more expensive. But one of the places they want to cut is cutting veterans benefits. That's not cool. That is not cool. You know, the amount of money that veterans get for the sacrifices they have made pales in comparison to a lot of other benefits that are given. And I think that is an awful, awful place to withdraw benefits from. So, off my soapbox, basically what Virginia Fox says following that is Democrats want future taxpayers and hardworking Americans to foot the bill. Americans shouldn't buy it. Those who will pay will be those without degrees and those who can afford to pay their debt. I don't find that to be quite accurate. I mean, you know, are there going to be people who don't make a ton of money that will burden some of the tax debt? Absolutely. But they're already, they're already carrying tax debt for all these other programs, and they're already carrying tax debt for everything else. Why not help Americans who are the lifeblood of the country? Making less than 125, these are people who do all of the real jobs that keep America moving. And the next question kind of becomes, okay, so what happens with the Supreme Court case? So the case basically in February heard arguments on two cases challenging the plan, which would cancel either $10,000 or $20,000 in student loan debt for millions of Americans. So 16 of basically 25 million borrowers who applied for this program last fall were already approved before it was put on hold for pending litigation. And the Supreme Court is basically expected to announce their decision sometime in the month of June. It's still untold as to which direction they would go, but I think the Republicans kind of thought there might be a chance they may not get it, so they're taking a little jump start on it. So the Republicans are attempting to repeal Biden's program as part of a larger package of proposals from earlier in the spring to try to lower the debt ceiling, which is, of course, still unresolved. And I've talked about it previously, and I will link that up here in the top right there. And so we can go back and look at that video. But when the GOP-led House has passed this bill, which includes several other proposed spending cuts like that VA cut and this cut, and obviously I've made my feelings on that well known. There are also Democrats who are a little skeptical of the plan. So this legislation to block the mass student debt relief plan may face similar fate in the Senate. The White House has already said it's going to veto it because that's how we operate. You know, the Republicans do something, Democrats don't like it, nothing gets done, things stay the same. That's how it operates. So the resolution is an unprecedented attempt to undercut our historic economic recovery and would deprive more than 40 million hardworking Americans of much-needed student debt relief, according to the White House. Since we're just ripping on sidebars here, I've got another one for you. I think it is absolutely ridiculous how much higher education costs in the United States right now. Take, for instance, the University of Central Florida, which is a very, very highly respected university in Florida. You know how much it costs to go there a year? $60,000. You're talking about $240,000 worth of debt purely for a bachelor's degree. That doesn't even include the higher level degrees that unlock the ability to make decent money in the United States. $240,000. And, you go to these schools, especially SEC schools, and you look at how much money they have in the sports programs, in the facilities, what they're paying teachers, the deans. It's a business. They are not in the business of higher education. They're in the business of business and making money. UCF, I am not kidding, has a lazy river. A lazy river. And that's what this money goes to, $60,000 a year. Now think about it. If they have 1,000 students, do that math. Do they need all that money? Why is it so expensive? And why are you burdening people who are trying to better their lives with this massive debt? However, on the flip side of that, I met somebody who had a degree that cost them about $175,000 in existential women's studies. What exactly are you going to do with that hundred and whatever $1,000 degree it ended up being? The answer is nothing. You can't do anything with it. And these universities offer a lot of degrees that you can do nothing with. My degree, for instance, is in history. You know what I've done with it in my entire life? Absolutely nothing. I've done nothing with my degree, not a single thing, because the actual list of jobs you can do with a degree in history is really small. It's not very many, and I'm still paying off a degree that I've never ever used. My bad. That's on me. However, I went to a state school, just like a lot of people do, and I'm still paying off the debt. So why not help these Americans who are struggling by putting a moratorium on ridiculously expensive schooling? Make them rein this stuff in and help Americans by making college affordable again. How about that? Um, so moving on back to the topic here. So, they're kind of, it's interesting that the numbers kind of change all over the place, where it's 18 million Americans before, then the Democrats and the White House say 40 million. The number kind of flies all over the place. So the actual number ends up being about 43 million Americans who are eligible. Now, that doesn't mean that's how many will apply. That's how many have the ability to do so. So, under the plan, Democrats have stressed that basically about 90% of the people who are eligible make less than $75,000. Basically saying it's a handout is unfair, and I agree. People who make less than $75,000 can use the $10,000 to $20,000 back for the student loans. I think for sure. Plan's going to cost around $300 billion. Okay, I understand that that's a lot. That is a lot of money for sure. How much money have we given Ukraine in the last year? A foreign country. How much money have we given Pakistan in federal, in foreign aid? Billions, 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 billions. And I am here to tell you that they do not like us very much. A lot of the countries we give a bunch of money to don't like us very much. Think about how much that will help Americans here in America right now if we go ahead and get this plan moving or do something to help them. One of the other things that's interesting is, what does it mean for like we were saying before, the pause on student loans, which will basically start them back up immediately, where people who haven't had to pay these back due to COVID and all this haven't had to do so. And now, bam, welcome back. You got to pay it off again. Interesting thing here, reported by a couple agencies. An internal education department document basically said that it's going to take time for the department to get back on track to transition into accepting payments. So they're not even ready to start accepting student loan payments again. So what's the rush? Doesn't make a lot of sense. I think the most difficult part when it comes to this student loan forgiveness is the Biden administration has done some other things and tried some other avenues, one of which was a public service loan forgiveness known as the borrower's defensive repayment. And the deal there is, this was a student loan repayment forgiveness plan for public servants, firemen, policemen, teachers, where it basically forgave them of some of the debt that they had to pay. And this basically happened in early May. It was announced that it had forgiven $42 billion of student loan debt for public service workers. But the problem is, research by the Student Borrower Protection Center and the American Federation of Teachers suggests that as many as 268,000 public service workers who have had that debt forgiven between September of 22 and March 23 will have that debt reinstated, meaning they thought that it was forgiven, and the government's going to come back and rerun that and say, hey, yeah, remember that? Yeah, you still owe it. Sorry. Go ahead and, as soon as you get that money together, just go ahead and, fire it over. You're asking for that from people who are already drastically underpaid. In my opinion, firemen, policemen, and teachers, they deserve way more than they're getting. Those are three of the most difficult jobs in America right now, given the country and the climate that we're facing. But they're not getting it. And now we're going to come back and get even, rougher on them and say, hey, sorry about that. We're going to need that money whenever you get it. That is unethical for us to do as America and unacceptable. So I'm going to close out today by doing a little recruitment thing here. So there is this company, and this company will give you, basically, you sign your contract with them, and they will give you 4 years of free college, free 50, free, zero payment required. They'll pay for your books. They will help you get lodging and pay for it. It is all covered. So what you do, you take your pen, you go down to the U.S. Army recruiting station, and you sit down with a fine U.S. military, Army preferred recruiter, sign a piece of paper, get the post 9/11 GI Bill, and your college is no problem and paid for, and you don't ever have to worry about it again. It's amazing. Do that. Uh, yeah, so I kid, but of course, that is always an option and something that I think more people need to think about because I think serving our country is an amazing way to A, give back, and B, get your college paid for. So, thank you, U.S. Army, for doing that and being so generous. And you are more than welcome to utilize this as a recruiting ad if you'd like to do so. You have my permission and my thanks for giving me the right to fly a helicopter. So, thank you guys for watching the channel and subscribing. It really means a ton to me, and I'm having a blast over the last couple of months getting these things going and talking with you guys. So, thank you so much for your time, and you have an awesome day.